key you seek is the solution to all of our travails, brought to life by that most ancient and sacred of arts. Puppetry.
Is this thing recording? Okay, here we go. Just gotta set the exposure here. Okay, all right, there we go. Hello, everybody. I'm Super Jump Woman, and this is The Jump. This is my first YouTube video, so I don't really know what I'm doing yet, so I hope you don't mind if...
Hey there, Super Jump Woman.
Oh, hi, Glue.
Hey, what's going on, dollface?
Ugh. Hi, Neckybeard. Listen, I'm kind of busy right now, guys. I'm trying to record my first YouTube video.
Whoa, I've always wanted to be on a YouTube.
Can we be in your video?
Well, I don't know if you guys would be very interested in this video. It's about a puppet show.
A puppet show?
Aren't puppet shows for little kids?
Well, not this one. It's the new Dark Crystal series on Netflix, and it's adult as fuck.
Oh, we just finished watching that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we sure did. It was pretty neato. I felt the art direction was particularly inspired. Freshly innovative while staying true to the legacy of Jim Henson's 1982 masterpiece.
Well, I think they used way too much CGI. Want me to complain about it? Complaining about stuff is the best way to get views on YouTube.
No, this isn't that kind of video, Neckybeard. I want to talk about the politics of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
What the hell are you talking about, Super Jump Woman? There are no politics in that show. Why do SJWs have to make everything political? The Dark Crystal's a fairy tale. It's not political at all.
Look, Neckybeard, I just happened to notice some themes in the show that seem to resonate with our contemporary political situation. Even if the creators didn't explicitly intend to embed political messaging into the story, that doesn't mean we can't draw such meaning from the text.
Haven't you heard, Neckybeard? The author is dead.
You better not be talking shit about Jim Henson, Glue. He was a great man.
Look, Neckybeard, I don't have time to explain Death of the Author to you again. And I want to get this video finished before dinner time, so scram, would ya?
Okay, look, I'm sorry, I'll shut up. Actually, now I'm really curious about what could possibly be political in a puppet show about magic and monsters.
Okay, fine. Well then, pipe down the both of yous and let me get started.
Okay.
Let's begin. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is one of the most sober and honest depictions of the liberal-fascist bargain in cinematic history.
That's bullshit.
Shh, we're not supposed to talk, Neckybeard.
But it's bullshit. There are absolutely no fascists in the Dark Crystal.
Okay, so what do you call the Skeksis?
I don't know, they're just a bunch of evil old bird things. They're certainly not Nazis. They don't even have any ideology. They're just evil bad guys who want to live forever and stuff.
Exactly. Fascism is an incoherent ideology, Neckybeard. Above all else, fascists seek power. They're opportunists who play fast and loose with ideology. They'll bend or break their own purported values and even betray one another internally to advance their own positions.
Well, that sure sounds like the Skeksis to me. They're always backstabbing and betraying one another and making things up as they go along in their quest for more power.
Right, Glue. The Skeksis hate each other just as much as they hate the people that they oppress. They form shaky alliances with one another to further their own interests, but they don't really believe any of the shit they say to stay in power. That's what fascism really is. Political opportunism with a thin veneer of ideology.
So you're telling me that Adolf Hitler didn't have a coherent ideology?
Yes, exactly.
So what about Ein Reich, Ein Volk, Ein Führer, and securing living room for the master race and all that crap? I mean, say what you will about National Socialism, but at least it's an ethos.
Oh, Big Lebowski reference. Nice.
Why, thank you.
Look, Neckybeard, those were all just empty slogans that the Nazis used because they were effective for securing power for themselves in the time and place they lived. In practice, they shifted positions and went back on their own supposed ethos all the time. And they were constantly betraying each other. Have you ever heard the kind of shit that Goebbels and Goering and Himmler and all the other high-ranking Nazis talked about each other? The Nazis were constantly trying to stab each other in the back to vie for Hitler's good graces. And Hitler himself intentionally set up the administration of the Third Reich to encourage vicious competition among subordinates, with various factions vying for power and the Führer's favor. The Nazis basically hated each other, and they'd say or do anything to get more power.
Well, that does sound just like the Skeksis.
Well, nobody's saying that the Nazis were nice guys, Super Jump Woman, but that doesn't mean they didn't have a coherent ideology.
Well, just look at the war economy of Nazi Germany. Officially, the Third Reich was ideologically committed to a free market for the duration of the war from the outset. The Nazis publicly held the position that a command economy like the one that the USA had established was anti-fascist, at least early on. But once the war started turning against them in 1943, Goebbels convinced Hitler to implement a command economy, and from that point on, the Nazis officially pretended that total war was totally in line with their ideology.
You refer, of course, to the Sportsplatz speech, which led to the establishment of the seating of Goebbels as Reich plenipotentiary for total war.
Yes, and have you ever tried to read Mein Kampf? It's just page after page of jumbled contradictions and ideological confusion. The only thing the Nazis were ever sure about was what they were against. Anti-communist, anti-democracy, anti-Semitic. Fascism is always setting up boogeymen to rile people up and scare them into submission. Also, they can seize more power for themselves.
What does any of this have to do with the Dark Crystal?
Just shut up for 5 seconds, Neckbeard, and I'll explain it to you, God damn it! Ahem. As I was saying, the Skeksis perfectly exemplify fascists in the way they scheme and manipulate the masses, willing to step on anyone and each other just to get ahead. Their thirst for immortality symbolizes the lust all fascists have for political power. Their grotesque fascination with pomp and ceremony and the festering fineries they wear represent the fascistic fixation with the aesthetics of domination and the flimsy cloak of nobility they use to conceal their brutally simple ideation of might makes right. In short, the Skeksis are heavy on appearance and short on substance. They are experts at masking their intentions. At the beginning of the series, the Gelflings have all been fooled into believing that the Skeksis are noble lords,
the keepers of the crystal!
who protect the sacred crystal of truth, which is mystically tied to their homeworld Thra. The Gelflings swear loyalty to the Skeksis because they believe their lies about protecting the crystal and, by extension, the planet. Of course, in reality, the Skeksis use the crystal for their own needs, draining all of the crystal's life force to selfishly extend their own lives.
Well, just like fascists and capitalists promise that they'll make life better for the masses as they plunder our collective resources and build their own wealth and power.
Precisely.
I don't know. I think the way fascists gain power in real life is a little more complicated than the way the Gelflings got suckered into handing over the Dark Crystal to the Skeksis.
But it wasn't really that simple at all. You're forgetting about the Gelfling liberal bourgeoisie.
You mean the All-Madra?
Yes, the All-Madra, and the other members of the Gelfling ruling class. They were all instrumental in helping to build and preserve the Skeksis' fascist regime, just as liberal elites always aid fascists in taking power IRL.
Well, I thought liberals hated fascists.
On the contrary, my Caprine compadre.
Why don't you take this one, Glue?
Oh, okay. Let us return our attention to the rise of fascism in Nazi Germany. In his book, Nazism in Central Germany, Dr. Klaus Christian W. Szegman details how Nazi brown shirts worked with factory owners and other capitalists to destroy Marxist worker movements in what was then known as Red Saxony. Local capitalists paid gangs of Nazi brown shirts to bust up worker strikes and violently brawl with communist unions. And it wasn't just Nazi Germany, mind you. Mussolini's black shirts were similarly backed by Italian elites. Mussolini's first fascist combat squad banded together in 1919 and consisted of 200 street-brawling thugs who were similarly employed by Italian elites to subdue Marxist worker movements. Franco's fascists had similar support from elites in Spain, as was the case with wealthy elites back in Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist movement in China. And of course, wealthy elites supported Pinochet in his fascist coup against Allende in Chile, and the list goes on. The pattern is clear. Wealthy elites always side with fascists whenever the prospect of working-class revolution has threatened their positions of privilege and wealth.
The liberal-fascist bargain is a tale as old as Thra. Comfortable middle-class and wealthy elites always side with fascists for their own personal benefit. Just like the All-Madra and other members of the Gelfling ruling class, you know, the Vapran clan, the elites, aided the Skeksis in dominating the planet. In exchange, they received spoils and privileges. The Skeksis expertly divided the Gelflings into subclasses, with the Vapran clan at the top of the hierarchy. And this alliance between the Skeksis and the Vapran Gelfling elite is a perfect metaphor for the liberal-fascist bargain, and for the way that fascists and capitalists divide the working class.
Honored lords, welcome to Hurrah, home of the Vapra, seat of the All-Madra, who rules over all Gelfling.
But the Gelflings didn't even know that the Skeksis were misusing the crystal. Weren't they just a bunch of dupes?
Well, the All-Madra might not have known exactly what the Skeksis were up to with the crystal, but the Skeksis did openly flout Gelfling values. They demanded tributes from the impoverished Gelflings, they abused animals, they enslaved podlings. All of these actions are clearly unethical to the Gelflings, who by all accounts once lived in harmony with one another and with the other denizens of Thra.
Okay, so the All-Madra's a patsy, and the Skeksis are assholes, but that doesn't mean they're fascists.
The Skeksis weren't just assholes, Neckybeard. They were expert political manipulators who exacerbate class conflict to their own ends.
Why? Why do Gelfling hurt us so? Skeksis give so much and ask so little. It breaks our hearts. Sad. So sad.
Just like fascists in real life.
Very, very sad.
Well, indeed. While fascism is an incoherent, opportunistic ideology with only the goal of accruing power for fascist leaders, liberalism is all about complacency and Faustian bargaining. Liberal bourgeoisie might purport to have anti-fascist values, and yet they invariably tolerate fascism when it crops up because they don't want to put their own privileges at risk, and all the while the lower classes suffer beneath them all, placated by false promises and frightened by fabricated external threats. Speaking of completely fabricated external threats, I mean, the Skeksis take power initially by promising to protect the Crystal of Truth, but, like, protect it from what? Nobody in Thra wants to do harm to the Crystal. The Skeksis drummed up fantastic paranoia to seize power and then sustain a false narrative of some imagined external threat to hold on to it. The Gelfling elites benefit from colluding with the Skeksis, consciously or unconsciously, and the working people and creatures of Thra suffer hopelessly as a result.
Your tithe is well received.
And don't forget the climate change denial.
Climate change denial? What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, good point, Glue. As the Skeksis drain the life from the Crystal of Truth, a horrific darkening begins to plague the lands of Thra. But the Skeksis adopt an official position of darkening denial.
The more essence we consume, the weaker the crystal grows, the greater the imbalance, the faster the darkening spreads.
There is no darkening!
Yes!
It's like I always say, fascism is above all else an ideology of deceit.
Perhaps the Arathim's aggression has something to do with the Blight.
There is no blight!
Fake news about external threats, cover-ups of the real dangers, cognitive dissonance about the reality of the situation, all to keep the fascists in power and the liberal elites comfortable and complacent.
The Skeksis are our lords. We do not defy our lords.
I don't know. It still seems to me like the Gelflings were just a bunch of suckers. They just went along with whatever the Skeksis said.
Well, I'm sure a lot of them wanted to resist Neckybeard, but the Skeksis and the All-Madra were protected by the eternal enemy of the working class, the cops.
This is getting ridiculous. There are no cops in the Dark Crystal.
A lot of the main characters were cops, Neckybeard. Remember the Castle Guard?
Oh yes, the Castle Guard, aka the Skeksis brown shirts.
Bring the tithes to the collector's chambers. Quickly now.
That's a huge stretch.
Is it though? Rion's dad, Ordon, was a textbook example of all cops are bad.
Ordon wasn't bad. He was just trying to protect Thra. He didn't even know the Skeksis were evil until it was too late.
Yeah, that's the whole point of ACAB. When we say all cops are bad, we're not saying that each individual cop is a bad person. We're saying that all cops serve a bad system. Even if they're nice, good people, their job is to reinforce systems of oppression, and that's exactly what Ordon does in his role as captain of the Castle Guard.
The police exist only to enforce the hierarchies of class oppression through violence, Neckybeard. Or so I've heard.
And the guards themselves, like all cops, are unwitting stooges of the fascist regime, betraying their own class out of a misguided sense of honor and service.
Perhaps my paladins should seize you where you stand. Paladins! Escort Farah from the Citadel.
Well, I guess that does sound pretty cop-like. Okay, I admit it. Ordon was a dirty pig.
Critical support for the gobbles.
Yeah, gobble all cops.
Wait a minute, guys. I wouldn't go that far. I think that Ordon's death was actually a tragedy.
It was?
But he was a cop, and all cops are bad.
Well, remember, after Ordon dream-fasted with Rion, he realized the true nature of the Skeksis state. For the first time, he came to see the Skeksis as the fascist oppressors they truly were, and he made the decision to stand up against them.
I'm sorry I didn't believe you, son.
He did the only ethical thing any cop can do. He stopped being a cop and he joined the revolution.
We must go to the All-Madra, rally every Gelfling to our cause.
Ordon died a martyr for the working class.
No!
My son!
The Gobbles betrayed the revolution!
Lousy gobble class traitors!
I hereby withdraw my critical support for the Gobbles.
Okay, guys, I think we've played out this Gobbles bit. Look, Neckybeard, what's really important to understand is how quickly the Skeksis were willing to turn against their own castle guard as soon as they stopped serving their fascistic interests.
An astute observation, Super Jump Woman. It is indeed fitting that the first victims of the Skeksis' murderous rampage were their most loyal foot soldiers. It echoes the Night of the Long Knives, which was one of Hitler's first acts of power after taking over the German state. The Nazi High Command mass murdered many of their most loyal old guards, specifically focusing on anti-capitalist brown shirts like Gregor Strasser because they hindered the alliance Hitler was seeking to forge with the German bourgeois elites.
The Strasserists were killed because they were a threat to the liberal-fascist bargain.
Okay, that does sound a little Skeksish.
So to summarize, the fascist Skeksis gained power by cozying up with Gelfling bourgeois elites, their power enforced by the cops that were the castle guard, and together these elements brutally dominated the working class through a combination of fabricated external threats and the real threat of violence. The liberal-fascist bargain kept the Skeksis and the Gelfling elites in positions of power and privilege, and as soon as the castle guard came to see through the scam and reveal the truth to wider Gelfling society, they became early victims of Skeksis genocide.
Well, that's how fascists always take power. It's a pattern that's been repeated throughout modern history.
Okay, I'm starting to see that the Skeksis were a little similar to fascists, but I still don't buy this idea that liberals always support fascism. After all, it was the Gelflings who decided to fight back against the Skeksis in the end.
Well, not the Gelfling bourgeois elites. They fought to preserve the status quo until the bitter end.
You have defied me time and again.
I mean no disrespect.
Yes, you do. To me, to the Skeksis, to anyone who values tradition over self-righteous disobedience.
The Almadra died trying to preserve the fascist state to secure her own privileged way of life. She even offered up 50 Gelflings as sacrificial lambs to the status quo. The moment she did finally try to turn against the Skeksis, they murdered her, and Celadon took her place. And Celadon, being the liberal that she was in complete denial of the horrors of the fascist regime she collaborated with.
The Skeksis, in their infinite wisdom, named me Allmordra upon my mother's death.
And she actively opposed the Gelfling resistance movement.
And what will you three choose? Order or chaos?
And even when she finally realized the full evil of the Skeksis, she did what liberals always do. She tried to appease the fascists.
Wise and noble Emperor, I am Celadon of Harrar, daughter to Marin, the traitor Allmordra.
Proceed.
My mother was led astray by conspirators who foolishly wished to overthrow the mighty lords of the crystal.
And she was quite willing to bargain with the lives of the people that she was helping the Skeksis to oppress.
7 Gelfling from each clan. That is the request you made of my mother, and I shall honor it.
However, as Celadon quickly and tragically learned, there is no compromising with fascists once they have taken the reins of power.
Look at me! I'm the Allmordra!
Oh God, reigns of power? Was that a horse joke, Glue?
Yeah, I guess it kind of was.
So you see, liberal elites are so fixated on maintaining their own positions of power that they're willing to do anything to appease fascists. Placated by comfort and privilege and terrified by the prospect of instability or change, they become the willing lapdogs of fascism until it's quite literally too late.
Bourgeois liberals see the lives of the masses as mere gambling chips to be sacrificed in the game of political poker that they willingly play with fascists, and at every turn they demonstrate a willingness to sacrifice these pawns to preserve their own safety and privilege.
Mixed metaphors aside, that's exactly right, Glue. Liberal appeasement can't stand against fascism because fascists can never be appeased. Fascists always want more. By the time liberals come to realize the true dangers of fascism, it's always too late, and it's the working class that takes the brunt of the resulting hardships.
Not unlike how the bourgeoisie, American and Chilean capitalists, and the CIA support supported Pinochet's fascist coup against Allende, or how the King of Italy pledged support for Mussolini, or how capitalist corporations helped build concentration camps in Nazi Germany to profit from the atrocities of the Holocaust.
But again, the Gelflings rose up against the Skeksis at the Battle of Stone in the Wood. Even bougie-ass Princess Celadon helped in that fight.
But only after abandoning liberalism. Remember, before the Gelflings could stand up to the Skeksis, they needed a powerful secret weapon.
The dual glaive?
No.
The Crystal Shard?
Nope.
Friendship?
No. Ideology.
Ideology? What the fuck are you talking about?
The Gelflings were only able to defeat the Skeksis because they adopted a coherent anti-fascist ideology.
Well, I think she's talking about anarcho-communism, Neckabeard.
Oh god, this is killing me. The Gelflings did not become anarcho-communists.
Well, they kinda did, Neckabeard.
We stand on the brink of anarchy!
Don't you remember when Brea solved the puzzle in the hidden chamber beneath the Harar throne room?
She had to realize the natural order of the Gelfling clans.
None of this makes sense. Mother always said that Vapra was the highest clan, but on 2 attempts, the Grotten symbol lit up first. Which is ridiculous, because everyone knows that the Grotten are the lowest clan.
What is your point?
So the natural order of the Gelfling clans was?
At least, that's what we always say. But why do we say that?
Anarchism!
Thra's true balance will be found when natural order is sound. Except there is no correct order. Because no clan is above any of the others.
That's ridiculous!
It's ideology, Neckybeard.
Well, don't you see? The Heretics puzzle was meant to deliver the Gelflings to the Circle of the Suns.
Now lore will guide you to the answers you seek.
So then the Gelflings showed up, and Skekgraw and Urgo presented a puppet show about the Gelflings and how they had to dismantle hierarchies so they could stand together against Skeksis fascism.
7 clans,
7 fires.
joined as one in the cause of unity.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the diegetic puppet show within a non-diegetic puppet show.
Why do I suddenly feel consumed by existential dread?
Anyway, the puppet show served as an ideological manifesto that laid out a coherent platform of revolutionary ideology. Skekgraw was basically the Pyotr Kropotkin of Thra.
Together, you are a cleansing flame. Be that flame.
And then later, when Rion used the Crystal of Truth to address the Gelfling clans, he basically became Thrall's first bread tuber.
Every fire across Thra carries your message, Rian. Every Gelfling is listening. So speak true!
Rebellion!
Well, does that make Skekso, the Skeksis Emperor, Thra's version of Stefan Molyneux?
Now you're catching on.
Skekso's speech through the crystal was Thrall's first shitlord SJW takedown video.
Your pathetic rebellion can only end in ruin!
This is starting to make too much sense. So, you're telling me that the Battle of Stone in the Wood was an anarcho-communist insurrection against fascism?
Yes, I mean, think about it. After the All-Madra died, the Gelflings rejected the very notion of hierarchy. There was no leader of the movement that led to the Battle of Stone in the Wood. The Gelflings all worked autonomously and anarchistically to solve their problems together, gather their forces, and take a stand against the Skeksis. The Gelflings were able to utterly defeat the Skeksis because they had a coherent anarchistic ideology. Unfortunately, they were ultimately unable to fully divest themselves of the liberal mindset, which would lead to the tragic undoing of Gelfling kind.
But the Gelflings kicked the Skeksis' asses at Stone in the Wood.
Well, yeah, but have you seen the original movie? Age of Resistance is a prequel, but we know from the feature film that in the end, the Skeksis regained their power and wiped Gelflings almost completely out of existence.
You, Gelfling? Like me?
Well, yes.
But I thought I was the only one.
Seriously? Holy shit, that's dark.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking dark, Neckybeard. And all because even after the victory at Stone in the Wood, Rion and the other Gelflings couldn't shake away their liberal pacifism. They just kinda let the Skeksis go, assuming once again that they could work out some kind of deal or compromise with fascists.
So what are you saying, that the Gelflings should have genocided the Skeksis?
Of course that's not what I'm saying, but they could have at least, like, I don't know, sequestered the Skeksis and re-educated them or something. It all would have been sorted out once they returned the shard they found in the glaive back to the Crystal of Truth. Then the Skeksis and the Mystics would have been rejoined, and balance would have been restored to Thra, and the Gelflings could have lived happily and anarchistically ever after.
Instead, Rian was all like, I'm no killer, and the Gelflings just let the Skeksis all go free.
To the castle!
To the castle! Good! They're running away!
Wow, what a bunch of fucking liberals!
Silly liberals.
So here are the morals of the Dark Crystal. The bourgeois liberal elites always side with fascists. Coherent anti-fascist ideology is needed to eradicate fascism, and the complacent cowardice of a liberal mindset in the face of fascism will always lead to tragedy and genocide.
Well, I hate to admit it, Super Jump Woman, but you've convinced me. The Dark Crystal really is a leftist tragedy about the dangers of the liberal-fascist bargain.
It sure is.
But what about the Mystics and the Podlings? What roles did they play in this leftist allegory?
Well, I've heard that YouTube videos should leave some questions open for discussion in the comments. So why don't we let the viewers tell us what they think about the Mystics and the Podlings in the comments down below?
That sounds like a great way to drive engagement.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were doing a YouTube video.
Uh-oh, my existential dread's kicking up again. Something about all this seems suspiciously meta.
It's probably best if we don't think or talk about it.
Be sure to subscribe!
Hey, we have a bunch of new t-shirts. Also, Luna designed this awesome poster, and you can buy one if you want. No pressure though. Order now at non-compete.com/shop and support NonCompete.
There is no scientific proof that there's any correlation between a man's racial characteristics and his native ability or character. In all racial groups, we find the same range of potentialities. We find idiots and geniuses. We find criminals and philanthropists. We must judge each man as an individual and not by the color of his skin or his eyes or by the length of his nose. Come in, gentlemen. It's comfortable. And remember that there is no master race. That is a scientific truth. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.